Welcome to Fab Lab. Today we're going to be talking and learning about bridges and bridge construction and civil engineering. But first, we need an introductory story. And what better story about bridges than 3 Billy Goats Gruff? So I will now tell the story. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, there lived 3 Billy Goats. There was the biggest brother, the big Billy Goat. There was the middle brother, the medium-sized Billy Goat. And there was the baby brother, the wee little baby goat. And they lived very happily in their fields, except one day they noticed that their field was getting all eaten up and there was nothing green left. But they looked in the distance and they saw a wonderful mountain that was filled with beautiful green grass. The problem was how to get there. Connecting their field to the mountain was a gully, and inside the gully lived a grumpy old troll, and that troll loved to eat Billy Goats. So how could they cross the bridge and not get eaten by the troll? Well, finally, they were so very hungry, and they came up with a plan. The first part of their plan involved the wee little youngest Billy Goat. And one day he was sent across the bridge. Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap. When out came the grumpy old troll. "Who's that tramping over my bridge?" "It is I, the youngest Billy Goat." "Well, I'm going to eat you up." "Oh no, please don't eat me. You don't want me. You want my brother. He's coming along next. He is much bigger and much fatter. I'm too scrawny. I will not make much of a meal." "Oh, bigger you say? Fatter? Okay, little goat, you can pass." "Yay, thank you, troll." Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap. And the littlest Billy Goat made it to the field of grass. Next came his brother, the medium-sized Billy Goat. Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap. "Who's that tramping over my bridge?" "It is I, the medium-sized Billy Goat." "Well, I'm going to eat you up." "Oh no, you don't want me," said the medium-sized Billy Goat. "I am much too small. You want my brother. He is so big and has so much meat. He will make a much bigger meal." "Bigger, you say? Meatier? Okay, then, you may pass." "Thank you, troll, thank you." And with that, the medium-sized Billy Goat crossed the bridge. Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap, and joined his brother. Next, it was time for the big brother Billy Goat. Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap. "Who's that crossing my bridge?" "It is I, the biggest Billy Goat. I've been waiting for you. I'm going to eat you up." "Well, come on and get me," said the big Billy Goat. And as the troll lunged for him, that big Billy Goat gave him a big Billy Goat kick and sent that troll flying right into the gully where he was never seen again. So with that, the biggest Billy Goat continued on his way. Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap, across the bridge where he joined his 2 brothers. And they ate so well that day. As a matter of fact, they stayed in that valley and it fed them for many, many years. And they lived, how boys and girls, happily ever after. Snip, snap, snout, this tale is told out. And now, let's learn a little bit about what makes a bridge a bridge. Hello, everyone. Let's learn a little bit about bridges and how they work. First of all, what do you think civil engineering is? Civil engineers are the folks that actually design, construct, and maintain the natural and built environment. And that means bridges and tunnels and dams. So civil engineers work with the natural environment, but they use man-made, human-made tools to make it so it's easier for us. So they can divert water or help us cross rivers or help us go through mountains. That's what civil engineers do. And building bridges, that's the job of a civil engineer. So who knows, maybe you'll be inspired by bridge building and one day you too can become a civil engineer and design bridges. So let's start with what are the different parts of a bridge. And this right here is, let's start right here with the deck. The deck is what connects the bridge from one part of the land to the other. And this card right here, we call that card the load. And whatever the load is, that's what's kind of crossing the bridge or adding pressure to the bridge. So the load goes from the deck from one end to the other, in this case, across a river. This, which is supporting the bridge, is called a tower. And what we have here is a suspension bridge. So with a suspension bridge, we also have cables. And this is adding further support to our towers. And you'll notice our towers go into the ground here under the sea. And they're held up. They hold up the cable. And the cable has hangers that further give it support. And over here with the suspension bridge, they come over here to the land and they're held in by an anchor. So the anchor will hold all those cables in place, giving it some extra support. And one thing we didn't mention were the foundations. And the foundations will be at the bottom of the towers, in the middle of, into the ground, so that the towers are nice and supported. Now, I wonder how a bridge supports a load. Well, different kinds of bridges support loads in different ways. So let's see, this is the simplest bridge of all, and this is a beam bridge. And when we have a load, it creates two major forces that act on the parts of a bridge. One force is called compression, and that pushes on or squeezes the bridge parts. The other force is called tension, and that pulls on or stretches them. For a bridge to do its work, each part of the bridge must stand up to all the pushes and pulls that act on it every day. So we have compression and we have tension. And if you look at this beam bridge, here is what's in green is the compression, and what's in red, that is the tension, and they are working together to support this load. Here's our suspension bridge, and again, we have compression from the big towers, and then we have tension supported by the cables and the wires. An arch bridge is compression only. And we're going to talk a little bit more about arch bridges in a minute. But right now, I'd like to learn more about a load. So I'll tell you what, we're going to stop for a minute right here, and we're going to have an experiment. And we're going to see what effect a load has on the bridge we just created.
We're back again to show you another way that our bridges stay nice and strong with equal balance. But first, if I drop this book, it falls down automatically, and that's because of gravity. Gravity pulls our book down. It won't float in the air, it'll just drop right down. For a bridge to stand, it must support its own weight, like we saw before. So that means weight has to be equal on both sides, like with the rope. So if we put our hands here and pull on the book, the same time, the same strength, it doesn't move. But if I suddenly let go, the book's gonna move because it's not equal anymore. We do the same thing where we push our book in, so now we're both pushing, our book doesn't move. But if I let go, the book moves. So that's why our bridges have to be equally strong on both sides, otherwise they'll collapse.
Let's look at some of these different kinds of bridges. And the first bridge I want to talk about is an arch bridge. Arch bridges are so beautiful, aren't they? Well, I wonder how they work. An arch's beauty comes from its graceful curve. Its strength comes from how this curve carries weight, or the load, outward in both directions to the abutments at the ends. The abutments are what anchors the bridge to the land. So we can't really see where the abutments are on the land, but that's what connects the bridge to the land right here. Since everything is pushing and being pushed at the same time, all parts of an arch are compressed or squeezed. Now, a lot of these arch bridges are built in stone because stone is super strong when it's compressed, but it's weak when it's pulled or under tension. So ancient builders figured they could span longer distances using stone arches instead of stone beams, which are both pushed and pulled. What a great observation these early builders made.
Hi, boys and girls, we're back, and we're here to just show you something really cool about good bridges. Now, good and strong bridges, they'll have equal weight on both sides, on one end and on the other end. It's kind of like a game of tug of war. So if we both pull on our rope really, really tight, you'll see that neither of us is moving. It stays strong. But if I suddenly let loose, what happens? I lean forward, it's like I'm falling, but her side of the rope stays strong. And it's this opposite. If we both come back and we're both equal weight and then she gets loose, I'm still pulling the bridge really strong and she's curving in. So that's what happens when you don't have a good bridge. But when you have a good bridge, you're nice and strong and neither of us caves in and we're both supporting the bridge equally.
The next bridge we are going to be looking at is called a beam bridge. And a beam bridge is the most classic bridge we'll be talking about today. This is an extremely classic bridge. It is the famous London Bridge, where you can find in, you guessed it, London, England. Right over here you will see the deck that carries the load from the abutments, in other words, the ground from one end to another. Here we have our two towers that are being held underneath the water into the ground by the foundation. So I wonder, we all know about London Bridge, right? And we're all familiar with that famous childhood song. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Well, where did that song come from? I'll tell you. People think it was 1,000 years ago when the English and the Norwegian armies battled the Danish Vikings. The London Bridge separated the two warring sides. When the English didn't cross the bridge or row their boats under it to attack the Danish fort on the other side, they tied ropes around the bridge's wooden supports and they rowed their boats as hard as they could downstream. So as they rowed the boats, they pulled that bridge and that bridge came tumbling down. So that, folks, is the story behind London Bridge, which is maybe our most classic beam bridge that we can see today. Now, this is a truss bridge, otherwise known as a trestle. And what trestles do is they connect one mountain to another. Imagine if you were a train and you would have to go up hills and down hills and up hills and down hills. Wouldn't it make so much more sense to have one bridge connect both the two hills, and so the train can just easily cross? And that's where we often see the truss bridges. They're used for trains. And what you'll notice here, what makes this special, is that you can see the triangles. And sometimes you'll see the triangles going one way and then another. And these bridges also are often seen made out of metal, because metal is very strong. But why the triangles? Well, triangles are used because they're very rigid or stiff shapes. And the great thing about triangles is they don't change when a force is applied, because their shape helps spreads the force evenly around the sides. That property makes the triangle a terrific building block when it comes to building bridges. Now we're going to talk about a suspension bridge. Now with the suspension bridge, all of a sudden we now have our cables. And the cables help the suspension bridge by giving it more support. And to better explain how a suspension bridge works, I am going to stop right here And we're going to leave you with this beautiful picture of the Golden Gate Bridge as we do an experiment. Hold on, everybody.
Hi, Fab Lab friends. Right here, I made a bridge. But I wonder how many books this bridge can hold. Let's test it out. It's a very simple bridge. I put a piece of long cardboard to make it look like a bridge on our little chairs, which are our ends. Ready? 1, 2. Oh, it only held 3 books. How can we make our bridge hold more books? We're gonna make a suspension bridge. Stay tuned. Okay, I'm back. You can see that I built a suspension bridge. And what I did was I started with the same piece of cardboard on the chairs, but I added some thick rope on both sides, and I tied them at each end of the chair to make them really, really tight. And then I took some string and I tied them just vertically from each rope and taped it with duct tape to the cardboard. You can take as much string as you want. The whole point is to experiment with it and see how strong you can make your bridge and how many books you can make your bridge hold. So you can add more string either going this way, you can do some zigzags, you can do whatever you think of just to make your bridge as strong as possible. But let's test how strong this suspension bridge is. So here we go. All right, 1, 2, 3, still going, 4, 5, 6, and it collapsed. But we got to 6, which is 3 more than what we started with. And like I said, we can get this bridge to be even stronger the more string we add at the bottom connecting to the cardboard, and even how tight we make our ropes, and that's really what matters. So in our suspension bridge, there's a lot of support going on, all stemming from our chairs. So that kind of is what a real suspension bridge is like, in the pillars that it gets support from and holds onto. It pushes down on that, which is stronger, and everything kind of pushes down on something else, which displaces all of the weight.
In the 1800s, in Scotland, the builders, civil engineers, built a very famous bridge called the Tay Bridge. And they said that it was the longest bridge ever to be created, and that it was one of the best bridges in the world. And the engineers built it to go for such a long distance and to be able to take such a wide load. And the Tay Bridge was developed for trains, because at that time, trains were the primary way for people to transport goods from one place to another. You can see here, it's a truss bridge. We have the metal triangles. But something happened after this bridge was built, and they said it was the best bridge ever designed, but oh no, one very windy and stormy night, as a train was crossing the bridge collapsed and the train went into the water. But what happened? Why did this bridge that was so carefully designed, why did it collapse? I'll tell you what, we are going to take a little break and we are going to see an experiment right now, something that you can actually do at home, and you will see what happened to the Tay Bridge. Hello, Fab Labbers, welcome back. So why did the Tay Bridge collapse if it was such an engineering marvel? Well, there were a couple of factors at work. The first factor, which we already hinted about, was wind. So let's build a little bridge. Let's see what wind does to a bridge. Here I have some supports. We'll put our bridge on top. Let's give this bridge a load. This will not be a train. Instead, it will be a unicorn, okay? Now, let's add some wind. In this case, we're gonna have some artificial wind. And look how sturdy our bridge is. Well, let's see what happens now if the wind is added. So, our load fell off, and the whole deck fell off. So this bridge did indeed collapse with the wind. And that's part of what happened to the Tay Bridge, is that the force of the wind put a lot of pressure on the bridge, and that put extra pressure on something else. And this is what they have figured out since the disaster happened. And that is, the bridge was held together. It was a metal bridge, and it was held together with metal bolts. And the metal, even though metal is strong, in this case, the bolts that were holding it with the wind and the constant force, they gave out and they snapped. And you can think, wow, metal, can metal really snap? Well, take what I have here as a paper clip. If you have a paper clip at home, you can try this. And I'm just gonna go back and forth with my paper clip. And just imagine, yes, a bolt is bigger than a paper clip, but the force that I'm putting on this paper clip is a lot less force than a big train would put on. So the trains are going back and forth. The wind is blowing and blowing and blowing, and pop! Uh-oh, my paper clip snapped in two. And that's what was happening to the bolts. As the wind was beating down, they were getting strained and strained and pulled, and then when that load of the train came through, boom, they just snapped and the train went into the water. Now, don't panic. That is a really sad story, but engineers learned from that. So the civil engineers saw what happened with the Tay Bridge, and now our bridges are better designed and they're stronger. So if you want to learn to design bridges, we can all learn from these engineering disasters, especially so we don't repeat them. And now, boys and girls, I would like to show you some footage of what is called the Impossible Bridge. And this was a contest set up to see who could design the best bridge in the world. So let's see, and maybe again you'll be inspired to do some bridge designing of your own. Stay tuned.
Again, a low bridge is ruled out because of heavy boat traffic. But there's no airport on the Swedish shore. They can build as big as they want. And they need it big, very big. To clear boat traffic, the bridge will have to be at least 200 feet above the water. The center span, at least 1,500 feet long. To meet these challenges with the best possible bridge, the consortium holds a design competition. One of the most spectacular proposals requires building the largest arch bridge in the world.
I think you don't really get an idea of the magnitude of this arch. You might get it from the ship going underneath, but it really is big. It would be a monument of some kind.
But arch bridges have an Achilles heel. As the arch sweeps down toward the water, the clearance for large ships decreases, eventually to nothing.
You always run the risk that a ship could get in there, and therefore you have the risk of hitting the bottom part of the arch, and then the whole thing collapses.
If not an arch, what about a suspension bridge? Suspension bridge technology enables the longest spans of any design. Two enormous cables stretch their length. Shorter cables dangle down to hold the roadway. But connecting cables to more cables makes suspension bridges very flexible. Trains don't do well when tracks bend under their weight.
And railway traffic is so heavy that if you have a suspension bridge, you will find, if you look at it from the side, that the train will always go up a little bulge. It will almost going uphill all the time.
Suspension is ruled out. Arch ruled out. So engineers turn to the one design that can answer all their concerns: a cable-stayed bridge. Its structure is rigid enough for heavy train traffic because the support cables attach directly to the towers. And there is a bonus. Cable-stayed bridges are cheaper to build than suspension bridges. Not having the two enormous main cables saves tons of steel. It's a winner. The best design to meet all the Oresunds' needs is a towering two-level cable-stayed bridge.
there's a very famous riddle having to do with crossing a bridge. And you're going to have to use your reasoning skills to try to figure it out. Stay tuned while we play the riddle and see if you can solve it.
Taking that intern. Taking that internship in a remote mountain lab might not have been the best idea. Pulling that lever with the skull symbol just to see what it did probably wasn't so smart either. But now is not the time for regrets, because you need to get away from these mutant zombies fast. With you are the janitor, the lab assistant, and the old professor. You've gotten a head start, but there's only one way to safety: across an old rope bridge spanning a massive gorge. You can dash across in a minute, while the lab assistant takes 2 minutes. The janitor is a bit slower and needs 5 minutes, and the professor takes a whole 10 minutes, holding onto the ropes every step of the way. By the professor's calculations, the zombies will catch up to you in just over 17 minutes. So you only have that much time to get everyone across and cut the ropes. Unfortunately, the bridge can only hold 2 people at a time. To make matters worse, it's so dark out that you can barely see, and the old lantern you grabbed on your way only illuminates a tiny area. Can you figure out a way to have everyone escape in time? Remember, no more than 2 people can cross the bridge together. Anyone crossing must either hold the lantern or stay right next to it, and any of you can safely wait in the dark on either side of the gorge. Most importantly, everyone must be safely across before the zombies arrive. Otherwise, the first zombie could step on the bridge while people are still on it. Finally, there are no tricks to use here. You can't swing across, use the bridge as a raft, or befriend the zombies. At first, it might seem like no matter what you do, you're just a minute or 2 short of time. But there is a way. The key is to minimize the time wasted by the 2 slowest people by having them cross together. And because you'll need to make a couple of return trips with the lantern, you'll want to have the fastest people available to do so. So, you and the lab assistant quickly run across with the lantern, though you have to slow down a bit to match her pace. After 2 minutes, both of you are across, and you, as the quickest, run back with the lantern. Only 3 minutes have passed. So far, so good. Now comes the hard part. The professor and the janitor take the lantern and cross together. This takes them 10 minutes, since the janitor has to slow down for the old professor, who keeps muttering that he probably shouldn't have given the zombies night vision. By the time they're across, there are only 4 minutes left, and you're still stuck on the wrong side of the bridge. But remember, the lab assistant has been waiting on the other side, and she's the second fastest of the group. So she grabs the lantern from the professor and runs back across to you. Now, with only 2 minutes left, the 2 of you make the final crossing. As you step on the far side of the gorge, you cut the ropes and collapse the bridge behind you, just in the nick of time. Maybe next summer you'll just stick to the library.
Okay, everyone, this concludes our presentation on bridges. But now, I think it's time for one more experiment. What do you think? And we're going to see right now, how strong is paper? And can we actually create a working bridge from paper? Let's see. Hello, everyone. We're back. Now, do you think that you could possibly make a bridge out of paper? That seems so impossible. But guess what? As future engineers, I'm going to issue this challenge to you. See if you can design and build a bridge out of paper. Now, one thing you can do, you take your piece of paper. Well, I'm going to use 2. Make it that much sturdier. And maybe I'll try to, I don't know, kind of fold this in half, make a tent. And then if you put a book on it, what do you think is going to happen if I put a book on this? Yeah, it just flattens. That's not gonna work, is it? But maybe by using a tent, what if we folded our paper in thirds? Let's see, and you can double up your paper, even triple up your paper if you want to make it stronger. Here we go. And now I'm going to tape it. Oh boy. To make a nice triangle. And the tape's going to be kind of like those metal bolts that we used in the Tay Bridge. So now we have this. So let's see what this does. I'll get one. Oh, it still flattens. But what if we try to make like a trestle? Now I made 3 of these. And I'm gonna take 3 of these tents. And they're in triangles, so the 3 sides of the triangle will work to equally support the weight of the book. And here I have a nice trestle. Now let's see, with a flat surface, that's going to make a nice surface to put this book on. Let's see if it works. It works. Okay, now let me try. Oh, it only took 1 book. Now I'm wondering though, what would happen if I put it kind of like this? Let's see what this does. Oh, I have a book up there. Now let's try a second book. Now let's try a third book. Now let's try a 4th book. I wonder, with using these pillars, how many books I actually can put up here. What I'm going to challenge you to do is take some paper and do some experimenting and see how strong you can make your bridge and how many books your bridge will support. And let us know what you come up with. We would love to see your bridges. Feel free to design the bridge and email it to the children's room at children's.fairlawn.buckles.org. And we'll post them on our website. Thanks.